your time differently. What's up, everybody? Welcome into a new and somewhat delayed edition of the Slate. We appreciate your patience and sticking here with us because we got you for a hard-hitting, 25 minutes, whatever it is. Adam Kaufman, Reed T. Fowler, Jeff Ulrich will be joining us momentarily. We'll get to a little bit of golf later on as time allows, but big news, of course, week 2 in the NFL kicks off tonight, Reed, just a few hours from now, not even, and it's talk about a primetime game, like primetime of primetime, my friend. We got the Chiefs, the Chargers, both these teams coming in off of wins, elite quarterbacks that barely made any mistakes in their first games. But before we get to that, I know you got a little something, whatever it is that's been lingering that you have to get off your chest, maybe just a huge Russell Wilson fan and you're not happy with how things went in Seattle. What is it?
No. So there's this ongoing debate, and that's the nicest way to put it. Friendly debate between myself, Jeff, who are on one side, and Pierce on the other. Usually I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to conference. Well, not really, but like I'm usually in the middle, right? Like I can see both sides, but I take it like the more and more I think about that game, the more and more I am completely out in Seattle. And the reason why is you had to have two goal line fumbles, and still at home, Seattle, the Broncos had a very viable chance to win that game. Yeah. So you needed two goal line fumbles. Any one of those go in, and this is not like some powerhouse defense. Jamal Adams wasn't on the field. Bobby Wagner is no longer there. This is not 85 Bears. This is not the Buccaneers. This is not even the Rams. It's the Seattle Seahawks. They're not like some powerhouse on the goal line. So this defense isn't like, oh, we stopped this, 7 times, like Pierce was saying. They got lucky. They got lucky multiple times on the goal line. If one of those goes in from the 1 yard line, they lose. They lose that game. So the more and more I think about it, at home too, and Seattle has one of the biggest home field advantages. Mm-hmm. So the more and more I think about it, and this is because Pierce is on this show, and some people might be on this show looking at Seattle as being, oh, they're 10-point dogs. Take them, absolutely. Maybe money line. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your money. Go buy a Subway. Go buy something that's worth much more than that. Don't waste your money. The Seahawks aren't a good team.
So earlier in the week, I guess it would have been Tuesday, coming off of that Monday game, then I was doing this show with the Mats, Meiselman and LaMarca. And LaMarca, Meiselman was a little bit concerned about what's going to happen to that Seattle defense minus Jamal Adams now, the surgery that he's having, and obviously is not going to be available to them. LaMarca was breaking out all the PFF metrics and saying that actually this is probably a good thing for Seattle. This guy has been just putrid in coverage and defending in every possible metric available. But my favorite part of this conversation, Reed, is that you're looking at a Seattle team that is 1-0. 1-0 team, quarterbacked by Geno Smith, who had like one of the games of his life. But like now you're out. Like now you're out on Seattle. Which, if ever there were, going into the year, there were 1,000 reasons to be out on Seattle. They finally give you a reason to maybe believe a little bit, and you're going, nope.
No, I was way out in Seattle. Like, you can roll the tape. I was way out in Seattle back in July.
But that's my point. Like you didn't need extra convincing.
No, and they only won by 1. That's the other thing. They won by 1 point over a team that fumbled the ball twice on the goal line and decided to kick a 64-yard field goal at the end of the game. They won the game by 1 point. So the game, like every team has this, right? The Jaguars last year beat the Colts to keep them out of the playoffs. And the Jaguars were a putrid team last year. Mm-hmm. So every team has this. Any given Sunday, yada, 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 or in this case, Monday. But Please don't put a lot of stake into that game. Please don't. If you're on Seattle, and kudos to the Seahawks. That was their Super Bowl. Pete Carroll. And look, this is the other thing. Who do you think knows Russell Wilson's weaknesses the most of any team, of any coach, of any organization? It's Seattle. So give me a break. Give me a break.
Between handing off at the goal line or, going for a 64-yard field goal line. Nobody like Pete Carroll knows how to take the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands. Unbelievable. Let's talk about tonight, though, because, time is relatively short, and this is This is a hell of a game that we got in front of us here, my friend. Like I said, it's in Kansas City. Both these guys, Patrick Mahomes had an unbelievable season debut, the 5 touchdown passes. He was basically perfect. Justin Herbert on the other side, a little tamer in terms of only throwing for 270, 280 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns, didn't make any mistakes. That defense, Khalil Mack being there, newcomers all over the place. Of course, we have to talk about Keenan Allen not playing tonight. He is out with the short turnaround, dealing with the ankle injury. But this game, you have KC favored by 4. Of course, a lot of people's Super Bowl picks this year right there in the conversation with Buffalo and others. And but the big thing here, and we'll talk a little DFS as well with the $1 million contest available in the DraftKings lobby to people tonight, $15 to enter. You got an over under of 54, man. That means fantasy points all over the place. This is the highest total of the week. It's one of only a few games in the 50s that is, at least in terms of the projections going into the week. Is it going to live up to the hype, though? Are we going to see this much offense?
I think you hope so, right? The one thing that worries me about that are these defenses, like you talked about, Koff, with Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. I'm on record again. I'm gonna keep on doing this, saying that I think Bosa is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to get 15 plus sacks, and he got 2 last week or on Sunday. And now Khalil Mack, I believe, had 3. So yeah, I mean, this is the best offensive defensive line combination the Chargers have, and I'm all about it. I know Jeff likes the Chargers as well in terms of the spread. I actually like them on the money line at plus 160. And the reason being is I think this game is going to be a lot closer. I skew towards the under I like the over because Harrison Butker is out. So Kansas City is going to probably go for 2 a lot more. If the kicker doesn't, I forget who it is. If he doesn't do well in the first couple of goes, then you're going to see them go for 4th down. You're going to see them go for 2-point conversions. That skews when you have that type of schematic to the over usually. But having said that, these defenses are a lot stronger than they were last year. And the Chargers, even though they're out J.C. Jackson, you're still looking at a pretty solid unit all around, right? So that scares me on taking the over. If I had to choose, I would. But it's a long tail to the under that I'm a little worried about.
That handsome baseball cap gentleman that popped on your screen in the middle next to our DraftKings Sportsbook odds, Jeff Ulrich, kind enough to join us now. And Moose, welcome to the show, but let's just roll with it. Pleasantries aside, what do you think of what Reed was talking about in this game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't have a huge lean towards the sides, but it just feels like an overreaction to just say that the Chiefs are like going to be as dominant as they were in week 1. And it worries me a little bit that Keenan Allen is out and stuff like that. And I've always, when the kickers are out, it feels like the coaches just loosen up a bit too with their play calling. It's like, well, let's just go for it on 4th down and stuff like that. So it worries me a little bit. But like, if you're going to give me the Chargers with 4 points against anyone this year, I'm pretty much just going to take it across the board. Like, they're a good team. I mean, like, we got Justin Herbert. So again, it's not like a full confidence player where I'm like, yeah, like let's hammer the Chargers. But yeah, I'm going to take 4 points. Like, I'm just going to do it. That's probably where I would lean on the side too. I kind of like Reed's call on the under. I think there's a lot of scenarios where the under can hit. And yeah, like, even though it's obviously a high profile matchup, but like the Chiefs could get ahead. The Chargers offense could kind of be a bust without Keenan Allen. And maybe it just ends up being like a bit of a dud of a game. But if the Chargers win too, I mean, like, their defensive line could be dominant. So I almost like that call better than going anything on the money line, even though I know that's what most people are going to be talking about tonight. Yeah,
and the preseason had this more of a pick'em, right? The preseason line had more of this of a pick'em, and then
it's an overreaction, right? Like, it
is an overreaction, and it's look. And I mentioned this morning on the Sweat that Mahomes averages 3.2 passing touchdowns in his first 4 games, dating back to when he actually got the starting position for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the case. You got to skew probably towards 3 to 4 touchdowns for Kansas City, putting them at 28. That means that the Chargers, it's really up to them, right? Can they move the ball? Can they score on this secondary? And L'Jarius Sneed, these guys are solid. They're a solid secondary, and we've seen it kind of progress year over year, that the secondary has become a lot better than what we're used to.
DraftKings Sportsbook tweeted out a little while ago, by the way, 75% of the spread handle on tonight's Thursday night football game on the Chiefs at -4. So, just letting you know where some of the money obviously has been going. Just a sort of a bigger picture thing as it relates to the Chiefs, but it does obviously relate to tonight as well. This performance, the 44 points in week 1, Reed, we'll start with you on this. Mahomes going for 5 touchdowns. CEH, who was not your primary rusher anyway, but did catch a couple of touchdowns. Kelsey's Kelsey, 8 of 9 for 121. He had a touchdown. Juju is the number one technically receiver now with Tyreek Hill gone. 9 targets, 6 catches. He was solid. But I guess, are you surprised in any way or at any level that it's working so well so quickly? My mind going into this season with, as many losses as that offense took, and yes, you still have the Kelsey Mahomes tandem, but you lost, a good chunk of those wideouts and key contributors in that sense. I looked at it and I said, it's not like this is a bad offense or an average offense. It's still a well above average offense, but 44 touchdowns or points in week 1 and 5 touchdowns from Patrick Mahomes. I thought there'd be a little bit of an adjustment period, and then just, boom, right out of the gate, looks like this team is going to be just as dangerous as ever.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, when you take a look at lines, yes, quarterbacks do change them. And this is for futures or picking sides, offensive line changes those lines. But when you actually dive into historically the large range of numbers, they really don't change much. So when Tyreek Hill left, that was another overreaction that people thought, oh, Mahomes is going to regress. The Chiefs are going to regress. It's one player. Yes, he's explosive, but it's one player. And you take a look at how these guys look. The Chiefs started last year putting up 33 against the Browns, 35 against the Ravens, 24 against the Chargers, and 42 against the Eagles. So they're historically fast starters to the season. It's when you get to that middle part is when the Chiefs kind of have a lull, like every other team. But it's hard to go against the Chiefs early on. But having said that, I just think it's the Cardinals. This is more an indictment of the Cardinals, and the late Danny Green, who was the coach of the Cardinals when he gave us that famous quote. We thought they were. They're not a good team. Yeah. Right now, they're not a good team, and that's more of an indictment. And when you have someone like Mahomes, who's so electric, who's so efficient, and even Travis Kelce getting less of his routes run, he's still that guy. And now Juju Smith-Schuster getting all of that work in the first half. This is what I was saying earlier. You cannot doubt Patrick Mahomes.
So, Jeff, you're inclined to believe we'll get a better idea of who the Chiefs are offensively going up against, obviously, a tougher defense tonight?
I think that they could be less successful, but no, I think their offense is pretty, if his prop is still low, is worth an overlook. And I like Mike Williams on the other side, because Mike Williams has so many routes to get there for us that, I think that he probably will.
Yeah. And Scantling, I think his receptions is 3.5.
Yeah, so that's really low.
Yeah, I think he goes over that. The one thing about Juju, though, he's got Bryce Callahan, who out of 93 graded cornerbacks on PFF, he's rated 5th. So that does scare me a little bit in terms of his props. Doesn't mean he can't be efficient. Doesn't mean he can't break one for, 70, 80 yards. That's less. And that's why I like Scantling, because who's backing up JC Jackson, right? Yeah. I mean, that's not great. I forget who he is, but and maybe that's the reason why I like Scantling, because I don't know who he is. Scantling's got 4.3 speed. And look, he got 4 receptions for 44 yards last week. Wasn't one of the guys who got the touchdown. And this is what Mahomes told us. He's like, it's gonna be like, you pick your avatar here in Super Smash Brothers. That's what it is. And you can't really choose, like, you don't really know who it's gonna be. And I think that's why MVS is someone that I like as a value.
I almost feel like you could just go over on all 3 of the Chiefs. We got 56.5, 43.5, and then 34.5 for Hardman. I have a hard time seeing that 2 of those guys don't get there, because if you win 2 out of 3, obviously you're profiting. I might actually do that tonight.
I think Hardman anytime touchdown. I forget what it is. Cough. While I talk about it, you can look at it. Yeah. He was tied, I believe, either with first or at a close second with Travis Kelce in red zone targets last year.
They schemed him up again in week 1.
And you see how they scheme up CEH through that little shovel pass. You don't think that Hardman, when you have guys like Derwin James, Drew Tranquill, Murray coming downhill.
Yeah. I think that's the one place where Hardman will definitely replace Tyreek Hill is in the red zone. They're going to do all the same stuff that they did with Hill, but they're going to use Hardman. And that makes sense. Hardman's not quite as electric in the middle of the field. I don't think anyone is as Tyreek Hill, but in the red zone, I think he can actually probably do most of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Plus 195 to answer your question.
Yeah. Even first touchdown too. I mean, that's sort of a toss up, but yeah, plus 195 for anytime touchdown. Mecole, I don't mind that at all. I mean, he's got Asante Samuel Jr., who who had that great interception on Carr, but Carr also threw it in triple coverage. It's Mahomes does that, but he's a little more accurate than Derek Carr.
So if let's spin this into DFS a little bit, it's all, everything we're talking about is obviously relevant. Who do you think is going to be a good fantasy performer tonight? $2.5 million Thursday night millionaire contest, $1 million going to first place, $15 to enter. We've already have about 136,000 people that are in that contest right now. So as you can see, they're pricey guys, especially at the captain spot. A lot of good options, whether it's Mahomes, Herbert, Kelsey, Eckler, who was really disappointing in week 1, 36 on the ground and in the air, subpar game by his standards. No Keenan Allen tonight, which is significant. So, as we move kind of into the flex, what's your approach, I guess, first and foremost here, Jeff? Are not like who's your favorite captain. You can give me that if you want, but I'm more curious if, are you looking for kind of a punt play or a super cheap guy at captain so you can load up in the flex? Do you want to put do you want to invest in Mahomes or one of those guys and, know that you're going to have a punt play or two in your flex? What's the approach?
Yeah. So I think I think for the Chiefs, I have a hard time getting away from Mahomes as the captain. Like, I think Mahomes is also a good, like anytime touchdown scorer. Like, I think there's just as terms of, him scoring a touchdown, the Chargers on the ground, I mean, like not as a passer. So the Chiefs have a good front line. He's had pretty big rushing days against them before, a little bit more play action, taken off when their ground game isn't effective. He'll do that. And so I like that, because if Mahomes is down and the Chargers are winning this game, it just means more pass attempts, maybe a few extra rushes as well in there. But if the Chiefs win, again, we're talking about all this spread out potential, production. Like, who do you really target? Like, the one who we know is going to benefit is Patrick Mahomes. So hard time getting off him. On the other side of it, I think Mike Williams is probably my favorite play from the Chargers. Again, like lots of different scenarios where Mike Williams can just go off. You could use Mike Williams as your captain and then just come back with all Chiefs. If you think the Chiefs are a blowout, and then Mike Williams is just catching, all the points, which could easily happen, gives you access to Justin Herbert. And Williams could go off, and then the Chargers could just, they could win the game, obviously. So I like Mike Williams. And then on the other side, I know, obviously Kelsey's in play for a captain spot. I mean, I'm not saying it's not. I think that he's a good fade candidate tonight. We can't play everyone in the captain. I mean, so those are the two guys I'd be really looking to build around. Again, you're making maybe 5 lineups. Those would be the guys where I'd be heavy on.
What about you, Reed?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad strategy at all. I do like team stacking the Chargers quite a bit. I do think that the Chiefs will be chalk throughout this entire season, especially in the first 4 games, just because of how well they start usually. So I do like taking the Chargers, and especially because they play well at Arrowhead. Herbert plays well for whatever reason against the Chiefs at Arrowhead. So looking at that, and then specifically taking 2 guys into consideration, and one is Gerald Everett. I think Gerald Everett is someone who needs more targets, really, to be someone in season long that you consider for a tight end 1. But you take a look at what he did, and now with Keenan Allen out, everyone's going to go to Joshua Palmer. I love Josh Palmer. I think he has a solid game. But if you want to be a little contrarian, want to be a little different, here's a guy we got a guy here. Here's a guy that could actually, and this is what we saw in Seattle, right? It was that this guy, and with the Rams, was that he was someone who profiles as a big wide receiver, and he showed that a little bit against the Raiders. So 4 for 54 and a touchdown is a pretty solid go for Gerald Everett. And then Josh Palmer, like I mentioned, he's getting all of the work that Keenan Allen is going to get. He plays in the slot, he plays out wide. He's someone too that could easily break this open. So those are 2 guys, but I think he's going to be popular, and that's why I like going to Gerald Everett.
While we're talking cheaper guys, then, who are, beyond obviously the 2 that you just mentioned, Reed, who are some of your favorites? If does Pacheco get a similar workload? Is he appealing to you at 4,400? Are you, obviously we can get into some of the more punt plays that are sub 1,500, 2K, but a defense, for instance, given all the points we expect in this game, but obviously what we saw from the defense on the Chargers side last week in that win over the Raiders, in as you look at a GPP and you're looking to be a little contrarian, is a defense appealing to you at all?
Well, yes, if you're thinking it's going to be a close game and it's going to be under the 54, I don't mind that at all, right? Is that if that's the case, then I do actually side with the Chargers defense because of the pressure rate, because of what they can do at getting towards the quarterback with just 4 guys. That's what you have to do against Mahomes. You cannot bring extra guys because he will dice you. Doesn't matter if Tyreek Hill is no longer there. He will dice you. I know they got 6 sacks against a porous Raiders offensive line, a really bad offensive line, and a poor secondary. But this is the narrative that this game is going to be under 54, and it's going to be back and forth in that sense, right? Not back and forth for an offensive side. But other than that, this one's really hard to look at value. You got to get one of these random tight ends. That's my opinion. Like, get a random tight end in there. You can score a touchdown. And whoever is that, if that's Fortson, sure. Like, we've seen him pop in the red zone. That's fine. But other than that, I'm going to try and keep it pretty balanced. I'm going to try and go, instead of stars and scrubs, keep my lineup pretty balanced.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I like Jerick McKinnon and Sky Moore. There's really nobody on the Chargers who, I mean, like, we could look down. I mean, we could, the Chargers are going to be tough. I mean, even with Keenan Allen out, like DeAndre Carter's priced up, Everett, Palmer, all in the same group. So, I mean, I really like Sky Moore and Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon's interesting because I don't think you're going to see as much Pacheco tonight, and McKinnon is easily like the second back there. But I don't know how much upside he really has against the Chargers front. It's hard for me to say like, oh yeah, like you can expect this. You don't need much from him at 26, but like, I think Sky Moore probably has the better upside at 1,800. And I know like the snaps were limited, the targets were limited, but I mean, you should see more of this guy as the season goes on. And if it does turn into a true shootout back and forth, you're just going to see more like, 4 wide receiver sets and Sky Moore potentially, if he's working, they'll go to him. So I like that situation a little bit more, but those 2 guys are the ones I think most people will be targeting. Everyone else just feels like a complete long shot. We talked for like 5 minutes about the Chiefs backup tight ends today with like Noah Gray. So You can do that. It's take your life into your own hands. I mean, it's certainly we're trying to beat 300,000 people. So I'm not saying it's not like a viable strategy. It is, because you need to spread out if you're making a bunch of lineups, obviously, but
I do really like the McKinnon call because I am not sold on CEH. Clyde Edwards-Helaire 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And you look at his snaps, 39%, rush attempts 31, routes 36, targets 8%. Those are all percentages. Jerick McKinnon had the same amount of snaps and 20% more targets than CEH. And this becomes
such a different matchup too.
And it's such a different matchup. Like long down and distance as well. 83% of the snaps went to McKinnon. So like that's what you got to think about. 2 minutes, the 2-minute drill, 60% went to McKinnon. 40% went to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So like that, I mean, anybody who's on Edwards-Helaire right now, I'd be trying to sell him in season long as much as possible. Put him in a 2-for-1, a 3-for-2, whatever, get the best player out of that deal, because this can't be sustained.
Yeah, I generally agree with you, which is why I did not draft him in any of the leagues that I'm in.
Trade him, DK. Trade him right now.
Any kicker love tonight? Occasionally there's, it's warranted, obviously, in these showdowns. And sometimes you get surprises. We obviously had, a good kicker night in that Tampa Bay Dallas game. Obviously, there's no Butker tonight, so you're relying on a secondary, a backup kicker in Amendola here.
Danny Amendola,
the other Amendola with the extra M, that guy, who has not obviously yet played. Elevated from the practice squad. I mean, what do we think? If you had to, you're going to get your extra points. I don't know how often these teams are going to, stall in the red area or close to it and have to settle for field goals. But again, we expect offense tonight. So whether it's a throwback to our guy Jason Rossi and stacking them kickers, or just picking your favorite, is there a life here, Jeff, for a leg or 2 in this game tonight?
I mean, no. from a basically no, but just from where they are in the salary standpoint, I mean, you can go down and get Sky Moore or Jerick McKinnon. So I mean, generally no, if you're playing for like obviously a really ugly outcome, maybe like maybe you pair the Chargers defense with like Hopkins or something like that, and you just like you fade most of the KC talent outside of maybe Mahomes, and you come back with a Charger stack. But that's a pretty like narrow outcome. Like again, if we were doing 100 lineups, like it wouldn't be a very big part of your GPP pool.
Yeah.
So and then Amendola, like I'm just not expecting the Chiefs to take anything like if it's like 4th and 5 and it's like the option is like a 49-yard field goal, like they're going to go for it. So
I know how you say 4th and 5.
What's that? Yeah, I wonder why I said 4th and 5.
Just hypothetically 4th and 5.
And it's a division game too.
It's
a very, very, very important division game against a team that is their closest right now to taking them off number 1 spot in the AFC West. Right when it's all said and done, they are not going to depend on double Amendola to win them the game.
Even like, I mean, we haven't really talked about the Chargers backups, but like Sony Michel and Josh Kelly did get run. Like they both got touches. Like Kelly had 2 receptions. It's not my favorite play, but again, like if they're a lot cheaper than the kickers. And if you get like if Kelly falls in the end zone here or something, or even just gets another gets like a 20-yard screen pass, that's pretty good, like for 1,600. So, I mean, like he's in play as well. Guyton is a guy. I mean, he's a guy, a bomb target with no Keenan Allen out. He could get more run. I think there's enough viable options that we can kind of just look past the kickers. Hopkins, sure. Maybe if you're making like those Charger stacks, like I said, playing for an ugly outcome. But other than that, kind of just leave the kickers to Rossi.
I would argue Austin Eckler probably has the best leverage spot as a captain, if you want to do it that way from a showdown perspective. But that's
I think most people will opt for the quarterbacks or like Mike Williams if they're going to go for Chargers, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And because of what Eckler did or did not do, like you mentioned, Koff last week, not a lot of people are going to be on that.
And if again, like Jeff has mentioned this or alluded to this a couple of times, if you're making 10 lineups, 20 lineups, I'm not saying make Austin Eckler your captain in 50% of them, but out of your 20 lineups, throw him a couple, see what happens. Why the heck not?
Yeah, I mean, Eckler is a very viable captain's candidate. I mean, there's no, and I definitely agree with what Reed said. Like, I think most people would rank him 3rd in terms of candidates tonight, just because the Allen news is so, everyone's gonna be hyper focused on Mike Williams for good reason. I mean, I like Mike Williams too, but.
And I do think in that case, Koff, because of how it correlates to how the game I think goes, then probably Hopkins is consideration in your flex spot as a kicker. Because you think he's scoring touchdowns, he's getting close, he's effective, so he's going to be in field goal range. Chargers are going to be on the Kansas City side a lot.